On Zephyr 9, where crystal deserts gleam under an alien sun, Elliot Varn, a lonely human technician, encounters Sylvara, a towering outcast with golden eyes. Their forbidden connection sparks a rebellion against a ruthless regime. Will their love survive the trials of the Crystal Nexus? Dive into their epic journey of defiance and hope. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more captivating videos, and inspire us to create even more amazing content. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as it descended towards Zephyr 9, the violet sky stretching endlessly above. Elliot Varn's eyes barely registered the barren landscape below, crystal deserts that sparkled like shattered glass in the dying light of an alien sun. The air outside was thin, dry, and heavy with the scent of minerals and nothingness. He adjusted his uniform, the sterile white fabric clinging to his skin, and sighed. Earth felt a million miles away, and Zephyr 9, this forsaken rock, felt like the edge of the universe. His mission was simple: repair the energy grids powering the Vionix colony. But he'd never felt so alone, even among thousands. These towering, pale-skinned giants with glowing eyes moved with purpose, but not warmth. They saw him as little more than a cog in their machine. Human technicians were a dime a dozen, and Elliot Varn was no exception. Stepping off the shuttle, he was immediately struck by the coldness of the colony. The sterile architecture, metallic and angular, stretched around him like a prison. No one spoke to him, and he didn't expect them to. The Vionix weren't interested in small talk with humans. Certainly not with someone like him, too insignificant, too ordinary. The vastness of the world made him feel even smaller. "Mr. Varn, welcome to Zephyr 9, a voice said. A Vionix technician, tall and impassive, handed him a data pad. "Your assignments are here." Elliot nodded, but barely acknowledged the Vionix's presence. His attention was elsewhere. The colony's dark, monotonous energy gnawed at him, and the loneliness echoed in the back of his mind. On Earth, he'd spent years feeling invisible, forgotten. Here, the isolation was suffocating. As the technician turned to leave, Elliot's eyes drifted to the horizon. That was when he first saw her, a lone figure, tall and imposing, standing on the edge of the colony. A flicker of gold in the distance, unmistakable. The first sign of something different. Elliot couldn't shake the image of the woman standing on the edge of the colony. His mind wandered back to the first moment when her golden eyes met his. From across the desolate plain, there was something haunting about her, a presence that felt both out of place and, somehow, entirely at home in this cold, indifferent world. Days passed, but the sight of her lingered. It wasn't just her towering height, nearly 9 feet tall, or the graceful way she moved through the desolate landscape. It was the isolation that radiated from her, the aura of being abandoned by everyone around her. She was alone, completely alone, and that made her different from everyone else he had seen on Zephyr 9. That night, curiosity overcame him. Elliot, feeling the sting of his own solitude, found himself walking through the colony's dimly lit streets. The familiar hum of the energy grid buzzed in the distance, the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. Then, as if drawn by some magnetic force, he found himself on the outskirts of the settlement, just past the outskirts, where the colony's lights faded into the darkness. There, he saw her again, this time, closer. She stood with her back to him, a solitary silhouette framed by the alien stars above. Her skin was pale, almost luminous under the faint light, and her hair, dark strands moving like liquid shadow, cascaded down her back. He hesitated, unsure whether to approach. "Devastaban," a voice called from behind him. A guard, his voice thick with disdain, warned him. "She's a genetic flaw, too large, too strong, not fit for pairing." Elliot's chest tightened, the words hanging heavy in the air. He felt an unexpected pull, a deep empathy that whispered, "She's more than they say." Without thinking, he stepped forward. The next night, Elliot couldn't stay away. His footsteps, quieter than usual, took him back to the outskirts, where the colony's artificial lights bled into the endless desert. He kept his head down as he moved, not wanting to draw attention. The Vionix never trusted humans, and he couldn't risk drawing their suspicion. Not now. And there she was again, Sylvara. She stood in the same spot as before, though this time her back was to him, her posture stiff and unyielding. The wind picked up, sweeping the long strands of her dark hair, making her look even more otherworldly. As she shifted, her golden eyes caught his again, as if she'd been waiting for him. Though she didn't move, a silent acknowledgement passed between them, a brief, shared moment in the cold desert air. Elliot took a cautious step forward, his heart hammering in his chest. "You're always out here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid the air itself might carry his words away. Sylvara turned slowly, her large form casting a long shadow in the dim light. Her eyes locked with his, and for the first time, she spoke. "I'm not allowed to be anywhere else," she said softly, a note of sadness slipping through. "But the desert doesn't judge." Elliot's breath caught in his throat. "I'm not sure I understand," he murmured, stepping closer. He felt a pull, magnetic, irresistible, like gravity had shifted. Sylvara's lips pressed into a tight line. "You wouldn't. The Vionix only value those who are perfect for pairing, those who are fit for the future of our people." She stepped back, her voice rough with bitterness. "I'm not that." Elliot's mind raced, a twinge of anger at the injustice running through him. But more than that, something else stirred in him, a deep empathy. "You don't deserve to be cast aside," he said, his voice firmer now. He dared take another step, closer this time. Sylvara didn't pull away. Their hands nearly brushed. The quiet electricity between them pulsed in the air. Elliot knew the risks now. The encounters with Sylvara, though brief and furtive, had become something he couldn't walk away from. Each moment spent with her left him craving more, a pull stronger than the oppressive silence of the colony. But the more he sought her out, the more dangerous it became. It wasn't just the vast desert or the endless isolation that threatened them. It was Calthor. Calthor, the overseer, was everywhere. His presence was a shadow that stretched across every corner of the Vionix colony. He wasn't just an enforcer of the genetic purity laws. He was their Levi-ing, breathing embodiment. The Vionix had to adhere to strict bonding protocols, ensuring only the fit could pair. And Calthor's cold eyes ensured that no deviation went unnoticed. Elliot saw the first sign of Calthor's growing suspicion the day after his conversation with Sylvara. The overseer appeared unannounced in the main hall where Elliot was working, his pale, calculating gaze sweeping over the human technician. There was no greeting, no pleasantries, just the cold recognition of another cog in the machine. "You've been on the outskirts," Calthor said flatly, eyes narrowing. "The outer zones are not within your purview." Elliot stiffened, but managed to keep his voice steady. "I was performing my duties, overseer. The equipment needs regular checks." "Is that so?" Calthor's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. "You wouldn't be the first to take a wander into forbidden territory." The tension thickened. Elliot could feel it. Calthor knew something, or suspected enough to make a move. Elliot forced himself to meet Calthor's gaze without flinching. "I'll stick to my work," he said, his voice edged with something he didn't feel, fear or defiance. Maybe both, but Calthor's eyes remained fixed on him. "You'd be wise to remember your place, human." The words echoed in his head long after Calthor left, a cold warning. The clock was ticking, and Elliot knew that if he and Sylvara weren't careful, their stolen moments would become their last. Elliot couldn't stop thinking about the cold chill in Calthor's eyes. He knew the enforcer was closing in on them, growing suspicious with each passing day. His only choice was to dig deeper, find out what exactly the Vionix Council planned for Sylvara. And when the opportunity came, he didn't hesitate. That evening, after the rest of the colony had gone to bed, Elliot made his way to the lower levels. The hum of the power grid seemed louder here, like the heart of the colony itself. But it wasn't the power supply he was after. It was the genetic archives. hidden beneath the vast complex of reactors and labs. This level housed the Vionix Council's most classified information. No human had ever been granted access, and no Vionix would dare expose it. But Elliot knew that if there was a chance to protect Sylvara, it would be here. He navigated the dark, silent corridors with the ease of someone who had spent far too many nights in a place he didn't belong. The genetic vault was located behind a thick, reinforced door, sealed with advanced security protocols. Elliot worked swiftly, his hands shaking slightly as he entered the override codes from a stolen datapad. The lock clicked open with a sharp, metallic sound, and the door slid back. Inside was a cold room filled with rows of data storage units, each one holding genetic blueprints, biological profiles, and records of the Vionix breeding programs. His eyes scanned the walls, the overwhelming data streams pulsing like a heartbeat. There, he found the file labeled Sylvara 1-3. His pulse quickened as he opened it. The file contained detailed information about Sylvara's genetic makeup, her physical traits, and, most shockingly, plans for forced hybridization experiments with human DNA. They had planned to use her as part of an illegal cross-species breeding program. The words blurred before his eyes as the weight of the truth hit him hard. Sylvara wasn't just an exile. She was a resource to be exploited. A tool. His heart pounded in his chest, a fire igniting within him. He had to act, and fast. He shut the data pad, urgency filling his every movement. There was no turning back now. The weight of the information burned through Elliot's chest. Sylvara, not just exiled, but chosen for a cruel, calculated experiment. His mind raced as he paced through his quarters, the cold walls of the Vionix colony pressing in on him. There was no time to waste. Calther's watchful eyes, the silent enforcers patrolling the streets. It was only a matter of time before they came for her. Before they took her, he had to act. He couldn't just stand by. By the time the twin moons of Zephyr 9 began to rise, casting long shadows over the crystal deserts, Elliot knew what had to be done. He would help her escape. The plan had to be swift, silent, and it would require more than just him. It required trust. Elliot reached out to Sylvara, arranging to meet her in the same hidden alcove, the place where they first shared the forbidden touch. As he waited, the anticipation twisted his gut. What if she didn't believe him? What if she thought he was just another Vionix pawn? Another part of the system that had trapped her for years? The ground beneath his boots shifted as Sylvara's towering figure appeared in the distance. Her head remained bowed, but her golden eyes gleamed, unwavering. She walked toward him slowly, deliberately. She'd been waiting for this moment, just as he had. "Elliot," she said, her voice soft but strong. "I can feel it. There's something different in you. What are you planning?" He stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly as he reached out to her. "They're going to take you, Sylvara. I found out. They're going to use your DNA for their experiments. They don't see you as a person. They see you as a resource." Her eyes narrowed, hurt flickering behind them. "What does that mean for us?" "I'm getting you out," Elliot said, the words more certain than he felt. "We leave tonight." Sylvara hesitated, the weight of his promise hanging in the air. But then she nodded, her shoulders lifting, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Where will we go?" "The Crimson Wastes," Elliot replied, a small spark of defiance flaring in his chest. "It's a place no one would think to look for us." And with that, they began to run, away from everything that had defined their lives. The night was colder than usual, the desert winds biting at Elliot's skin as he and Sylvara moved through the shadows. The crystalline landscape stretched endlessly around them, broken only by the occasional jagged rock formation or the distant glow of the colony's lights. Now fading behind them, the escape had gone too smoothly. Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As the hours passed, the landscape grew more desolate. The Crimson Wastes loomed ahead, a barren stretch of red soil and ancient ruins. But with every step they took, Elliot could feel the weight of impending danger. He stole a glance at Sylvara, who walked beside him, her massive form cutting through the cold night air with unnatural grace. The Vionix had never been built for subtlety, but her presence, though magnificent, was impossible to hide. Every step she took seemed to shake the ground beneath them. "We need to hurry," Elliot murmured, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. He had no doubt that Calthor would have already noticed their disappearance. Time was not on their side. Suddenly, the sound of distant engines cut through the stillness of the night. Elliot froze, his heart pounding in his chest. His worst fear had come true. They were already on their tail. Calthor's enforcers, relentless as ever, were closing in. Sylvara's golden eyes flicked to him, her expression unreadable. "We're being tracked," she said, her voice low but steady. "They'll be here soon." Elliot's stomach twisted. The drones were fast, far faster than they could outrun on foot. He looked around, searching for any form of cover. There was nothing but open desert in every direction. "We can't outrun them," Sylvara said, her gaze hardening with resolve. "But I can stop them." She moved faster than he thought possible, her powerful legs propelling her forward. Before Elliot could protest, she had taken off, running toward a nearby cliffside. "Get ready," she called back, her voice echoing in the night. Elliot hesitated for a moment, but he knew what she was about to do. As he followed her, his heart raced with a mix of fear and admiration. This was their fight now, and it was just beginning. The air around them crackled with energy as Elliot and Sylvara were hauled into the heart of the crystal nexus. The oppressive weight of the place bore down on them, its towering walls of pulsating, translucent crystal surrounded them like an ancient temple, its shape shifting with every movement they made. Each step they took felt heavier than the last, and Elliot could hear his heart pounding in his chest. They were trapped, exposed in the one place where the Vionix held the most power. Calthor stood just behind them, a silent, looming figure, flanked by his enforcers. His cold eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Welcome to the rite of embrace," he said, his voice sharp, "where your bond will be tested and your fate decided." Elliot's pulse quickened as he exchanged a fleeting glance with Sylvara. The Nexus was a place of both ancient power and unspeakable tests. Here, the Vionix tested the purity of bonds, pushing them to their limits. This wasn't just a ritual. It was a trial of their very existence. The crystalline walls hummed, vibrating with an energy that seemed to reach into their bones. The ritual was beginning. Sylvara's shoulders tensed, her gaze darting to the glowing orb at the center of the Nexus. She seemed ready to withdraw, her giant frame shrinking inward, her self-doubt threatening to consume her. But Elliot stepped forward, taking her hand firmly in his, grounding her with his touch. "You don't have to do this alone," he whispered, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. "We're in this together." Sylvara's golden eyes flickered with a mix of fear and something else, something raw and untapped. "I've never connected with anyone before. What if they're right? What if I'm not? Enough." Elliot tightened his grip on her hand. "You are everything to me. You always have been." The Nexus responded to their words. The orb at its center flared to life, pulling them into its embrace. Light exploded around them, swallowing them whole. Their minds collided in the blinding brilliance, reliving memories, her childhood isolation, his lonely nights on Earth, each painful moment drawing them closer. The connection between them deepened, defying the laws that had once bound them. And in that moment, Elliot knew. Whatever happened next, nothing would ever separate them. The Nexus felt like it was swallowing them whole. Elliot could feel his mind being torn apart, the overwhelming force of the energy pulling at every fiber of his being. He and Sylvara stood in the center of the crystal Nexus, their hands still locked together as the light from the orb pulsed violently, shifting like 1,000 waves crashing in unison. It was as if the Nexus itself was trying to tear their bond apart, testing the depth of their connection, pushing them to the breaking point. He could hear Sylvara's breath coming in quick gasps, feel her hand tremble slightly in his. Her fear was palpable, a silent weight pressing on them both. She had never been allowed to love, to bond, to trust anyone. Now, in the heart of the Vionix's most sacred and dangerous space, Their emotions were laid bare before the harsh scrutiny of the Nexus. The energy surged around them, their minds merging, flooding with memories they hadn't shared before. Her childhood, lonely and cold, trapped in a world that saw her as too large, too powerful. His life on Earth, marked by rejection, foster homes, always fading into the background. Pain, sorrow, and a deep sense of longing flowed between them like a tide. It was raw, brutal, but it was real. "Don't let go," Elliot whispered, his voice struggling to break through the crushing pressure of the Nexus. His eyes met Sylvara's, and for the first time, she met him fully, not with doubt, but with the truth of what she had always feared. She was unlovable. "I don't know how to let you in," she gasped. Elliot's chest ached with the weight of her words. "You don't have to. I'm already in." With that, something inside him shattered. The bright, chaotic energy surrounding them condensed, swirling like a storm. And then, crack, the Nexus split. A brilliant explosion of light erupted from the orb, a blinding flash that enveloped them both. The pressure released in an instant, levying them breathless but whole. The Nexus had shattered, collapsing into dust and energy, breaking apart under the force of their undeniable bond. Calthor stood frozen, his expression one of shock and disbelief. "We're not just a test," Sylvara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We're real." And for the first time, they both knew it was true. The air was thick with tension as the Vionix forces reeled from the destruction of the Nexus. The explosion of energy had rocked the entire colony, sending ripples of shock through every sector. But for Elliot and Sylvara, standing amid the ruins of their trial, the world had shifted. It wasn't just the physical collapse of the Nexus, it was the collapse of everything they had been told was true. Calthor stood at the periphery, his face pale with rage. His eyes locked onto the smoldering remains of the shattered orb. For a long moment, neither of them moved, the dust settling around them in a heavy silence. "You," Calthor's voice was low, trembling with fury. "You've defied everything. The Council will hear of this." Elliot stepped forward, every inch of him brimming with defiance. "You think they can control love. You think they can control us. Your rules are broken." Sylvara, her expression unreadable, stood beside him, her towering presence now a symbol of rebellion. She reached out, her hand resting gently on Elliot's arm. "This isn't just about us anymore," she said, her voice steady despite the storm that raged around them. "This is about everyone who's been cast aside." The Vionix have built their empire on exclusion and fear, but no more. Her words echoed in the cavernous space of the Nexus, carrying a weight that wasn't just emotional, it was revolutionary. The power of her conviction was undeniable. And then, it happened, as if sparked by her courage. A ripple ran through the crowd of onlookers. It wasn't just the soldiers that Calthor commanded. There were others. Silent Vionix who had long been overlooked, outcasts who had been watching, waiting for someone to break the chain. The young Vionix, those born with imperfections, stepped forward, their eyes filled with the fire of defiance. "You're right," one of them said, their voice clear and strong. "The Council doesn't own us." The mutiny had begun. Calthor's face twisted with disbelief as more voices joined in, until the entire room was filled with chants of rebellion. "Sylvara, Sylvara, Sylvara." And just like that, the spark of change was ignited. The Vionix, once united in their cold, oppressive hierarchy, now stood divided. The revolution had begun. The Sapphire Canyons were nothing like the cold, clinical world they had left behind. The jagged cliffs, bathed in the soft glow of Zephyr-9's twin moons, stretched high above them, casting long shadows over the rocky terrain. The air here was crisp and alive, filled with the hum of distant winds that carried the scent of freedom. It was a place of refuge, untouched, unbroken, and far from the clutches of the Vionix regime. Elliot and Sylvara had arrived at the edge of the canyons, the perfect place to start new. Here, no one could find them. Here, they could breathe, away from the constant fear and surveillance that had defined their lives until now. The makeshift structure they had begun to build took shape over the next few days, a simple but sturdy shelter made from the remnants of old human outposts and materials salvaged from the wreckage of the Nexus. Sylvara's strength was unmatched, her immense size and power putting her to work as she hauled supplies with ease. She had become a symbol of hope, not just to Elliot, but to the outcasts who had begun to gather around them. The first evening they spent in the shelter was quiet, peaceful. The stars above seemed brighter here, as though the sky itself was welcoming them. As they sat together on the edge of the canyon, the silence between them was comfortable. "I never thought I'd have something like this," Sylvara whispered, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight. "A place to call home." Elliot took her hand, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. "We build this together. This is ours." And in that moment, with the warmth of her hand in his, Elliot realized that this wasn't just a refuge for them. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a new life. For the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged. And they weren't alone anymore. The moon hung low over the Sapphire Canyons, casting its soft glow across the rugged landscape. The once sterile air of the Vionix colony was replaced by a refreshing, cool breeze, carrying the scent of wild herbs and open sky. The Haven of Stars had become a sanctuary, not just for Sylvara and Elliot, but for others who had joined their cause. The outcasts, those born with imperfections, those deemed unfit by the Vionix, now found solace in the refuge they had built together. Elliot stood at the entrance of their shelter, his gaze sweeping over the small, thriving community that had begun to form around them. The haven was alive now, filled with laughter, with hope. The sound of children running through the canyons, playing in the safety of this new world, made his heart swell with pride. It was a life they had fought for, a life they had earned. Sylvara joined him, her towering form casting a long shadow across the desert floor. She reached for his hand, and they stood together, watching as the first stars began to appear in the sky. "I never thought it would come to this," Sylvara murmured, her voice filled with a quiet awe. "From exile to this." Elliot squeezed her hand. "We made it happen, together." Her eyes sparkled in the moonlight, and for the first time, there was no doubt in her expression. "And now we'll make sure it lasts." Their child, Astra, slept peacefully in the small cradle nearby. Her small hands, tiny and delicate, grasped at the air as she dreamt. Astra, a hybrid, a levying testament to the love they had defied everything for. As the night settled in, Elliot turned to Sylvara. "I never thought I'd find a home," he said softly, his voice filled with a warmth he had never known. "But I found it with you." And with that, the future was clear. They had created a legacy, one built on love, defiance, and the promise of a world where differences no longer tore people apart.